everyone, it's Stephanie Laraway, board certified behavior analyst, here again to talk to you a little bit more about applied behavior analysis. In our last series of videos, we talked about the philosophies of ABA, the history of ABA, and what behavior actually is. Today we're going to dive into how you can modify behavior. The two techniques we're going to discuss today are called Ignore and Redirection and three-step compliance teaching. These are two techniques we use at our school to help modify behavior and help learning to occur. The first technique we're going to discuss is something called Ignore and Redirection. And Ignore and Redirection is really exactly what it sounds like. You're ignoring the negative behavior and redirecting to something positive. So you should always be thinking about what the child should be doing. So as you start to ignore all that negative behavior, you need to omit all your no's, stops, don't do that. We want to avoid any negative attention towards negative behavior. And we want to start phrasing things in the positive so that we can teach the children what they need to be doing rather than what they shouldn't be doing. So let's go through some examples on what you could say to avoid saying no. So if your child was running and you would typically say, no running, you can use a phrase like use walking feet. If your child was screaming and you typically say, stop screaming, you could say something like, show me a quiet voice. If your child was throwing a toy and you would typically say, stop throwing that toy, you could say something like, we build with those blocks, or show me playing with that toy. If your child typically gets up and runs around the dinner table and you say, no running, you could say, we sit at dinner. As we discussed in our last video, attention is a big function for children's behavior. Negative attention can be just as reinforcing as positive attention. Negative attention is what you're giving to the child when you label behaviors, say no, stop, don't do that, or yell at a child. That attention can reinforce the behavior and cause it to continue. By using Ignore and Redirection and minimizing the attention a child gets for those negative behaviors, you're naturally going to start to reduce and eliminate those negative behaviors because the behaviors are not getting the attention that was maintaining them. As you begin to phrase things in the positive and eliminates your no's, stops, don't do that, you're going to find that a natural teaching opportunity occurs with your child. You're teaching them what they should be doing. When you're using statements like, no, stop, don't do that, there's no learning opportunity. You're not telling the child what they should be doing. And sometimes they don't know what they should be doing. So by phrasing things in the positive, we're naturally teaching them what they should be doing. So another key component to Ignore and Redirection is something called praise or reinforcement. You want to start reinforcing your child the moment they engage in a positive behavior. So if your child was running and you ask them for walking feet, the moment they start walking, great job walking, that's what I wanted to see, I'm so proud of you. If your child starts building with those blocks you asked them to play with, there you go, you're building with those blocks, I knew you could do it. Giving all of that good attention for good behaviors. Right now, when you're using no's, stops, don't do that, or yelling at a child, they're learning that in those times of negative behavior, they're getting your undivided attention. And that's a big reaction. And that attention is maintaining those behaviors. What we really need to start to do is flip the script and make it so all those positive behaviors are getting just as much attention as those negative behaviors. So using phrases and making a big deal about all of the positive things your child is doing. What we really want to try to do is minimize the attention your child's getting for negative behaviors and maximize the attention your child's getting for all of those good behaviors. So let's walk through some examples of Ignore and Redirection. So let's go back to that throwing blocks behavior that we see from kids sometimes. So if you're going to ignore and redirect throwing blocks, you're going to ignore the behavior, draw no attention to the throwing of the blocks, and you're going to leave the blocks where they land. You're not going to scurry over and try to pick them up. You're just going to ignore it. You're going to try to engage your child by saying things like, hey, can you find a blue one? Let's count these. Let's stack. Ooh, let's sort them. Give them positive things, appropriate things they can be doing with the blocks so that we're teaching them, one, how to use the blocks, that more attention comes from doing positive things with the blocks, and that throwing behavior doesn't get any attention, so they're not going to continue that because all this great stuff happens when they're building, they're sorting, they're counting. So let's discuss another behavior that you can implement ignore and redirection on, and that would be hitting. Hitting is a little bit more difficult to ignore and redirect, especially for parents, but it is possible. So if you have a child who's hitting a peer or a sibling, you kind of are going to go over to them and you're going to response block their behavior. So you're going to take their hands as nonchalantly and as calmly as possible and redirect them to something positive. So take their hands and put them in their lap, or put them on a toy that they should be playing with, or if it's mealtime, redirect them back to their food. Any attention should be going to the peer that's gotten hit. And then for your redirection to the child that was hitting, typically hitting and aggression is a form of communication, so you want to give them some words or some phrasing that could help problem solve the situation, like, hey, that's mine, or stop, I don't like that, or please move over, something that's going to help them problem solve the situation. It could be as simple as no. That word can kind of help them use language rather than actions to kind of get their needs met. For a child that's nonverbal, maybe build in some visuals like a stop sign or a no picture, whatever is going to benefit them in that moment. So another serious behavior that some children can exhibit is running away or elopement. And you can use ignore and redirection with elopement as well. So if your child begins to run from you, you're going to want to retrieve them, and this is a critical component, as calmly and nonchalantly as possible. You don't want to draw any extra attention to that running away behavior that could inadvertently reinforce it and cause it to continue. Avoid eye contact and conversation as you're grabbing your child. You want to minimize that attention for that behavior. And then you're going to grab them and begin walking in the direction that you want to go in. And then you're going to redirect them to something kind of in your environment. Oh, we're walking to the car. Do you see that blue bird? Oh my gosh, the grass is so green today. Something like that. So you're getting them redirected on something positive. Now, a key component to all of the behavior examples we just discussed is providing praise and reinforcement the moment your child engages in any of the positive behavior. So the moment your child's building with those blocks or sorting those blocks, great job sorting. I love how you're playing with those blocks. The moment your child is playing nicely with a peer or, using gentle hands with that peer. Wow, I love how nice your hands are. I love how you're playing so quietly with your sister. Great job. The moment the child is walking next to you, not fighting your hand, holding your hand, or, just walking calmly next to you. That's walking. I love how you're walking right now. You have such nice, quiet feet. Something like that. Now, I know you're probably hearing me talk about this ignore and redirection, and you probably have a lot of questions, and one of your biggest one is, how do I get my child to do what I asked them to do, what I redirected them to do? And that's where 3-step compliance teaching comes in. So in our next video, we're going to discuss 3-step compliance teaching, and that's going to help you in your redirection component of ignore and redirection.